we're really concerned that if we don't make a change as a profession, we will no longer have a profession or really be relevant.
Thank you, and welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions and the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm an attorney who believes subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. I'm talking about more affordable legal services for everyday people and more predictable revenue for attorneys to help them pay down those six-figure student loans. In my fourth episode, I chat with Jessica Bednarz and Lauren Lester, legal professionals who are redefining what it means to be successful in this profession, and to that end, founded On Purpose Legal. We discuss the legal profession's antiquated approach, which is failing to serve both lawyers and the public, how lawyers should be a catalyst for change, and how On Purpose Legal helps create tools for a modern practice so that the profession remains relevant and healthy. It was a great conversation, and without further delay, here's the interview. Jess, Lauren, welcome to Law Subscribed.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
So, Jess, you and I met many years ago now, 2014, if you could believe it, doing ABA Day, which is a really cool thing where lawyers go and descend on Congress and lobby Congress for the legal profession and the communities we serve, usually asking for more funding for or LSC. And then through you, because I know you do all these cool things and innovative things, I reached out to you and you were like, oh, well, I got to introduce you to my friend Lauren. We're doing something really cool together. And Lauren, that's how I met you. So now I'll hand it over to the both of you. Just introduce yourselves for my audience and tell us how you met.
Yeah, so I'm Jess Bednarz. I'm the Associate Director of Innovation and the Justice Entrepreneurs Project, which is our legal incubator program at the Chicago Bar Foundation. And I'm the co-founder of a business with my good friend here, Lauren Lester. The business is On Purpose Legal. And I'll let Lauren talk about herself a little bit more in just a second. But the way Lauren and I met was when I lived in Colorado for a year, roughly 6 years ago. And when I was there, we were both on a committee with the Women's Bar Association. And I think I was talking about the work that I was doing in Chicago, and Lauren was new to the Colorado community, and she actually reached out afterwards because I think some of the things I was talking about, which we're actually going to talk about today, really resonated with her, and just led to a really great conversation. And we just kept talking and working on things together and eventually started this business together. So Lauren, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more.
Okay. I am Lauren Lester. I am a Colorado family law attorney based in Denver. I am a solopreneur and I have a client-centric practice that really focuses on providing affordable legal solutions for clients so that they can break up for the better.
All right. So before we even dive into your story and how you got started with On Purpose Legal, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about the thing you were doing when you met and more about that program and share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I gotta think about it. We were on a committee together, and I think it was called the Legal Services Committee, which isn't super descriptive. But through that committee, I think one of the things that we were working on as a group was putting together, I think, a training and I think a fundraising program or fundraising event at some point. But yeah, I think what resonated, and Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, was really I had just drafted or put together the first version of this pricing toolkit for the Chicago Bar Foundation. I think I was just talking about just the simple idea of not billing by the hour, and there are other ways to do things. And I think that's what resonated with Lauren, because she was certainly looking to start a practice that was not a traditional one, and I don't think had any intention of using the billable hour, but maybe was just looking for some guidance, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe she already had it figured out, but just looking to talk with other people who are doing things differently and not billing by the hour. Did I get that somewhat right, Lauren?
Yeah, the committee, my understanding is to figure out ways to provide legal services to the huge portion of our community that was not receiving that type of help. So that's what drew me to the committee. As Jess said, it ended up what their mission was or what the actions that they took was a little bit different than what I was hoping. stopping because it was really just around kind of fundraising and just doing more volunteer work, which I don't believe is the way that we're going to solve the access to justice problem. But the wonderful silver lining in all of it was that I did meet Jessica, and she and I sort of bonded over, we're not going to volunteer our way out of this problem, and how can we use sort of just capitalism in general and practices and a new way to practice to actually solve the access to justice problem.
And I was clearly interested in access to justice, but my second goal too was to meet people. So it was a win for me too.
Yeah, and I mean, access to justice is certainly one of the things that was floating around in the back of my head when the subscription model first dawned on me. But I think it's important to mention that there is a place for volunteerism, and there is a place for free legal services, pro bono legal services. But Lauren, like you said, that's not going to solve the access to justice problem, because it hasn't.
Correct. We've been doing that for decades, and we're still here.
Right. And there's a misconception, in the society at large that attorneys already make plenty of money, but attorneys have, at least younger attorneys, have a lot of student loans, and maybe they're not making a lot. And I think that it's okay if attorneys make money while providing access to justice, especially if it's an affordable amount. And that seems to be the path that you two took. And Lauren, while you were there for your own practice, obviously the two of you sort of you came up with this idea of on-purpose legal, so which is so much more than just one lawyer's practice. So tell me about how that came to be.
So I think, as Jess was saying, as she and I just started talking and really had a different take on what the legal profession could be and how it could solve these more systemic problems that have plagued our profession for a long time. And just over the years, as I sort of practically worked in my practice, and she worked among many practices in her role at the JEP, we really got a lot of real-time, in the trenches information about what could be possible. And then we wanted to share that with others and give others the information and empower them to make those changes in their practice. And so we created On Purpose Legal really as a response to the legal profession's antiquated approach to practicing law. We don't feel at this point in time that it really serves both the lawyers, the members of the profession, or the public. And in looking at sort of businesses that have taken this approach of this is the way we've always done it and we're not going to make a change, we're really concerned that if we don't make a change as a profession, we will no longer have a profession or really be relevant as we have been. So we wanted to put together some tailored resources that just teach legal professionals how to develop a modern practice that provides valuable legal services while also supporting well-being, so that we have happy lawyers who are able to serve their clients really well and start to approach and bridge that access to justice gap. So we really focus on practical solutions, giving in the trenches examples. These are from folks like me who do this every day. And so we're hopeful that by sharing what we've learned and continuing to build a community of lawyers who want to practice differently, that we can build a profession that loves what they do, that has lawyers who love what they do, and that really solves those systemic problems, like I said, that we really haven't been able to touch for many years.
And practicing differently, the subscription model is only one aspect of that. And, that's obviously what I'm focusing in on at Law Subscribed. But it hasn't been said outright that a subscription model is one of the things that you talk about in On Purpose Legal. So maybe tell me a little bit more about that, and then go further with what you preach and you teach, and what resources you have that go beyond the subscription model, but other innovative ways to practice law.
Sure. Yeah. So we definitely talk a lot about alternative billing. As Jessica said, we don't believe that the billable hour is helping anybody at this point. There's many issues with it, but just that the incentives of both us and our clients are not aligned. And in a service-based industry, that really shouldn't be the case. So we do talk about alternative billing, like subscription, flat fees, just sort of milestone work, limited scope representation. But then we also have a really big focus on just well-being. So we talk a lot about just productivity and ways to use tech to become more efficient in your practice so that you are focusing on the parts of your practice that you love, and maybe automating or delegating the parts that you don't love as much, or that maybe are just taking up too much time right now. We have a lot of success stories. So again, giving real life examples of folks who are practicing differently and sharing how they are doing it in their everyday lives to give people examples and hopefully inspiration. And then just a shift again about the legal paradigm and how, the way it's always been done doesn't necessarily mean it's the way it should be done. So just having people think a little bit differently and change that, have that mindset shift to really approach the practice of law, not as a way to generate revenue by selling time, but really just how are we providing value to each one of our clients.
And anything to add, Jess?
I don't know. That was pretty good, Lauren.
Are there any stories like that stand out to you? Like Jess, as you sit here, thinking about what attorneys have said to you, or even clients. I don't know. Are you guys getting client feedback too? Like what are some stories that jump out at you?
Yeah, I mean, I can draw on some stories from our legal incubator program. It's been a long time since I've practiced, but yeah. So a lot of it really is tied to pricing and a lot of the things that Lauren just talked about. So just some of the feedback that we've gotten is that from clients, they're just so ecstatic to understand on the front end how much something is going to cost and whether or not they can actually access it. So that's feedback we've gotten from a lot of JP attorneys. And then also having options. So something beyond just full representation, but unbundled services, that's something clients really, really appreciate. And these clients, because they're so happy with the experience that they've had, they become super clients and super fans, and they just refer more and more people to these attorneys, such that attorneys don't have to spend, or at least the ones that I'm talking about, like they don't spend much money or time on marketing. They don't have to, because they've gotten the service part down pat and just right, such that attorneys or clients are just so excited to work with them. They just refer everyone to them, which is really, really cool. And then the well-being aspect of it too. I mean, that's a huge part of our side business and what we're hoping to accomplish, because it's obviously a big problem in the legal profession. And as Lauren talked about with the success stories, I think the legal profession hasn't done a great job of showing people the different paths, or even creating different paths for people upon graduation. And it's always, at least when I went through, and I think largely still is, it's kind of like, well, you have this path where you go big law and you don't have work-life balance, or maybe you go public interest and you do, but there's nothing in between. It's like you have to make this choice. And we're trying to show people you don't have to make this choice. There are a lot of ways to actually make a good living and also have well-being at the same time, and have fun. So those are just some examples that come to mind for me. Lauren, I'm sure you have lots of personal examples.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy practicing, and, create a schedule around my life. And so my work is integrated into my life. It doesn't dictate my life. I have 2 small children, so it's really important to me that I am available for pickup and drop-offs, and that we have dinner time together and I spend time with them on the weekends, and that I just have time for myself. I work in a very emotional, stressful practice area in family law. And so it's really important to me to have that sustainability, is to take a break. And I build that into my schedule and am able to do that pretty regularly. And so just being able to have that control and be able to share with other attorneys that just because I don't work 90 hours a week and only work 4 days a week, that I can still have a very profitable practice. I'm still making the income that I need to make, plus some. Enjoy what I'm doing and still really serve my clients well, but that doesn't have to look like the traditional box of a burnt out attorney, working 90 hours a week and, just never sees their family or does anything that brings them joy. So we're really trying to show and be examples and be a resource for folks who want to be both successful and happy.
Yeah, and that's just one of the great parts of owning your own business, right? You get to have that control and you get to build the business that you want. That's what we're trying to show people.
So is it a goal then of on-purpose legal, or is it just sort of the natural result that what I'm calling the legacy model of law firms will be disrupted?
I
What's the
definitely say
legacy model?
Exactly what you all are talking about, the billable hour, work for a big firm, because it sounds to me like what on-purpose legal is trying to do, which is what I'm trying to inspire attorneys to do just with the subscription model, is sort of take the power back into yourself and how you could run your own practice. And that's not to say mid-sized firms, large firms can't use the subscription model. Of course they can, but if the associates there are looking at it as if what they're doing, they could maybe see how it could work in a smaller package and work really well for them as an individual, solo practitioner or small firm, attorney. So, my question again is, is it a goal, or is it just sort of the natural result that you'll be disrupting the legacy model?
I think it's both, if it can be both, because our idea and our business is founded on our belief that if we don't change, if no law firms shift to what we're talking about, this type of practice, the legal profession will no longer be relevant. So they're not going to have businesses anymore. So people do need to change. We need more people to shift to this type of practice, and those other ones can still exist, but at some point, at least some of us need to move to this type of practice if we want to remain relevant as a profession. And honestly, we're hoping that as people do this and there are more of us and people see how happy we are, not only because we have control of our lives again, but also because we're making good livings, that they'll want to move and join us, because what they're doing just doesn't make sense. They're not getting as much business, and or they're just miserable. Like, so many people are just miserable, and you don't have to make that choice. Like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both very easily, but come to us. We'll show you how to do it.
I'm so glad you say that about it's about saving the profession. And at least at the time we're recording this, I only have the trailer out because I really want to get a lot of good content that I could release on a regular schedule so that I could have work-life balance like Lauren, because this is, it's not a job for me. This is a side, project to change the profession. So hats off to you for also, doing your jobs and this, on-purpose legal thing. That hopefully, changes the profession for the better. But if you listen to the trailer, that's exactly one of the things I say, is that, the legal profession will become irrelevant if we don't do anything about it. So that I'm not the only one out there shouting into the void about that is a huge relief, number one. But number two, some feedback I've gotten from those who've heard the trailer is, why do we need to save the legal profession? And this is coming from non-lawyers usually, but I have my own answer to that question. But what's your answer?
Well, we need lawyers to be involved in solving legal problems at the end of the day. That's going to look a lot of different ways, and it needs to look a lot of different ways. And some of that, like one way of that, and this is something that we are in favor of at the Chicago Bar Foundation as part of our advocacy initiatives, is to include lawyers in companies maybe that aren't owned by lawyers. But we need lawyers to be involved in making those tech products or DIY products or whatever they are. We go to law school to get this legal training, and we obtain the skill set that other people don't have, and we provide a lot of value in that way. But I think we need to have a lot of different options. Those tools and services aren't going to serve everyone. We need to have a variety of options available, and that's, I think, where private practitioners come in, and we're always going to be there. I don't think it makes sense ever to cut private practitioners out completely. That just doesn't make sense. It might make sense if, like I said, we don't shift to this new way of practicing law, and maybe that's what it's going to come to. I hope not. But I think a much healthier profession includes a range of services and providers, all of whom probably include lawyers in some way.
I think that we have a lot to give as attorneys. I think the way that we're trained and how we advocate and counsel and represent our clients is always going to be important, but we have a gap now. There's a void that no matter where you're listening from, it probably exists in your state. And it's somewhere in, the high percentages of folks who have a legal problem, but they're not getting help from an attorney. And if that doesn't change, something will fill that gap. And we're starting to see it with some technology. The profession is able to hold off, I think, more than most markets because we have ethics rules and other structures in place, but eventually those will crack. Somebody will figure out a way to work even with the ethics rules in place because the market is asking for help, and we can provide that help. We just can't do it in the way that we've traditionally been doing it because the one size fits all, by mere fact that we have a gap, we're seeing that it's not working. So I think we still do have a lot of skill sets. Like Jessica said, we are still the best equipped to solve legal problems. We just have to approach the practice of law in a different way where we're not selling our time to consumers, but we are helping them solve a problem. At the end of the day, that's all they will ever pay for anyway. So if we can figure out what value are we providing, whether it's reducing anxiety or helping them save costs or having them create a legacy for their family, whatever it looks like to all of our different clients, we are still in the best position to do that. We just can't take the approach that we've been taking for decades because we're slowly seeing that crack and we know we're not serving the market.
And all of this stuff we've talked about is all about being client-centric, which I know is all the rage these days. Like, it's been this new concept in the legal profession the past couple of years. That's great. We need to do that. But, and a lot of people are making strides to move to that. But one place where they keep falling short is with respect to pricing. They make a lot of these other changes, but then they continue to bill by the hour. And if you continue to bill by the hour, you aren't truly client-centric.
When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional-only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high-quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at 650.com and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney, or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form at scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show.
Ooh, gauntlet thrown down right there. I love it. That's the quote for this episode. So, Lauren, you say you practice family law and you do some innovative billing practices there that I hope to have you back on the show later on so we could really do a deep dive. But other than family law, and I've interviewed actually now, I don't know what order this will be released in, but several family law attorneys that have opted to do innovative billing practices. Are there other areas of law, or is there no limit to what area of law you can approach with an innovative billing model? Because I keep hearing, litigation. We don't know what's going to happen, but obviously family law has a litigation aspect of it. So is it for all areas of law potentially that you could do these? You could ditch the billable hour, or are some firms going to say? Is there any credence to the argument that it does make sense in some situations, so you can't totally ditch it?
I believe that every practice area and every firm could do it. I do acknowledge that there are some aspects of our practice, whether it be the practice area itself or part of the case like litigation, that it is more challenging because there are more variables or unknowns from the outset. But what I think there's a big misconception of about alternative billing is this idea that you just have to flat fee your whole case from day one. Which we don't recommend and would be a really dumb thing to do. But that's not to say that there's not grounds in the middle between doing that and the billable hour. And so how I approach it isn't a phased approach because family law still does have variables and we still do have litigation. And I don't include that from the beginning because I'm not in a position to know what that's going to look like or the work or effort that's going to be involved. But I do believe that because all we ever sell and all that our clients are ever buying is a solution to their problem, that we can sell that in a way that is not based on our time because they're not buying our time. We just have to be really strategic and thoughtful and intentional about what we're including, limiting the scope, making sure we are covering all the variables. Sometimes it's just being upfront with clients to say, listen, litigation has a lot of stuff we don't know what's going to come up, but we've put together this menu of pricing, or we've included what we think is going to be covered, and here it is written down on paper, and if something else happens, we'll come back to you and talk about it, and there will be an additional cost. Just saying that up front is going to make a world of difference versus the approach now, which is we're just going to bill and send you an invoice, and the client has no idea what they're about to open when they get that invoice. So I definitely think that it's available in every single practice area and every single phase of offering legal services, but it's not going to look the same in every practice area for every firm or in every phase, and we just have to be really intentional about it.
Yeah, and I'll add, I mean, you can offer a flat fee for an entire case. As we said, we don't recommend it, but, there are some high net worth clients, for example, that might really value that certainty. Like, price certainty is valuable. Like, you can put a price on that. And I know, for example, we used to have a family law attorney in Chicago who did just that, worked with high net worth clients and would offer two options to all clients. It would be a very high but flat fee for the entire uncontested case, or contested case rather, or a flat monthly fee that was a little more customized. So you can do it. It just depends, again, on who your market is. And the good thing is that there are options.
Well, then let's say, because you have experience, Lauren, in family law, and you got that maybe, I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, but before you started doing innovative billing practices, so you could anticipate, what things are going to cost, how long things are going to take, that sort of a thing. What about for an attorney who's maybe just starting out or wants to transition into a new practice area and doesn't have a lot of experience? Where do they go? What do they do? How do they, learn about, that practice area so that they could better price out? And if On Purpose Legal is the place that they could go, feel free to say that too.
So I have never billed by the hour, and I started my practice right out of law school. So I was the attorney who did not have experience, but knew I didn't want to bill by the hour because I, quite frankly, have never heard somebody enjoy billing that way. And I wanted to have a different type of practice. So for me, it was a lot of trial and error. And actually learning what was involved in all of these cases, talking to some other folks, my colleagues and mentors, and trying to gather information. But really that's what it came down to, was knowing what I didn't know. And I just sort of had to learn that the hard way sometimes. And for someone who might be in that position, trying a new practice area, new to the practice of law in general, just wanting to do alternative billing, getting as much information as you can is my recommendation. And that absolutely is where On Purpose Legal comes in. We certainly provide a framework for giving you some of that information that you don't know yet, and how to price in alternative billing, and so that you can go and ask people for the information that you may not be aware of or have the knowledge of for your particular practice. But it is for everyone, there is going to be a level of trial and error. Absolutely. It's not a silver bullet. We cannot tell you that for your specific practice area and your specific market that, oh, you should absolutely just charge this, right? Each of us has to figure that out for our own business. But the more information you can get from the jump from others who are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps down the road, that's really going to be invaluable because you can learn from the mistakes they already made and hopefully not make those mistakes.
Yeah, so just to add on to that, it's really just working with more experienced attorneys, whether that be through On Purpose Legal, we'd love to have you, or a mentor in your community, or this might be a great opportunity to also plug legal incubator programs. That's a great way also to get some experience and, again, gain mentorship.
Bar associations maybe too is a good place.
Yes, yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. So you've both touched on this a little bit already, but you've talked about the technology. So, as I still learn more about On Purpose Legal, and I like everything that I'm learning, is there are there like technology recommendations that you offer there? And if so, or even if not, can you make any recommendations right now?
Well, so if we're still talking about pricing, then yes, I would say just generally we try to think about, trying to think of the way we frame it, kind of think about the customer journey and from starting all the way from, when does your target client learn about you, how, et cetera, all the way to delivering the service and ultimately concluding the case. And we talk about, the different phases there and how you could possibly use technology to become more efficient, but also just increase the value that you're delivering to the client. So some just really basic ones are, for example, when you're putting your engagement agreement together, there are document automation tools that you can do to turn that around really quickly. There are e-signature tools that you can combine with that, again, to make it really easy for somebody who might just be, signing your engagement agreement on their cell phone. So that's just one really easy example. And we talk about the examples through the whole journey. Lauren, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, we don't have any specific recommendations necessarily because we recognize that everybody's going to have different preferences and different service providers for softwares are going to fit better for different practitioners or practices, but we do share our own experiences. So if there's something either Jessica and I have used, we'll put a post on there about, hey, we've used this particular scheduling software and here's what we like about it. And here's what, maybe it is lacking or we wish it did a little bit differently, and let us know your thoughts. So we really are trying to just share the knowledge and create a community so that other folks who maybe have had similar experiences or have tried out other legal tech can also have a place to share what they've learned. So it's just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to legal tech because it's such a big topic and there's so many different service providers out there. I don't think we couldn't be experts in all of them, but we certainly can give our own experiences with them if it helps somebody else make a decision.
Yeah, unsponsored plug for the ABA Tech Show that happens in Chicago. But even then, I've found in my journey to review and put out information about technology for attorneys to use that want to be innovative is sometimes looking at like Product Hunt and like looking at like what companies, like what startups are out there that are not necessarily targeting the legal profession but have some incredible applicability, and hopefully have them on the show, their founders, to talk about what they're doing and even record a session of brainstorming how their technology could be used for the law. So I think certainly there's tech made just for lawyers, but even sometimes there's tech that's not made for lawyers that could be super useful. And a really good example of that is credit card processing, which is one of the technology things that you left out. But that always comes to mind for me because it's, should lawyers take credit card payments? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
But then how, right, with the technology, right? And you mentioned some incredible, generic ideas of different types of tech that attorneys can use, and they could Google that and find the different providers of those things out there. Somebody I interviewed, I don't know when the episode will air, but goes really into a deep dive on one of them called Afterpattern. And that's just one of many. But that one is geared more towards lawyers. But you look at, again, none of them are sponsoring, they can reach out if you want to. But like LawPay is a credit card processing that's just focused on the legal profession, right? And they promote, they help you with your IOLTA and all that. And then there are other competitors that just focus on the legal profession. And then you've just got companies like Stripe, that are super user friendly and are really easy to do some incredible, billing things with. And setting up a subscription is super easy on Stripe and some other competitors as well. I think GoDaddy just recently launched their own payment processor, right? But these aren't geared towards lawyers specifically, but some technology or not, you got to take credit cards these days, especially if you're going to be doing innovative billing.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the point that you're making is that, you don't always have to stay within legal. Don't be afraid to look outside of legal for tech, but just ideas more generally. I listen to a lot of different podcasts and read stuff outside of legal all the time. And I think for me, that's how I'm creative and try to find new ideas. So don't be afraid of stepping outside of legal, and actually maybe do step outside of legal, like at least once every week or so.
So we touched on the whole access to justice thing early on, but I want to bring it back to that just for a moment. Somebody who I've talked to for the show threw out the idea of sort of a government approach to the subscription model for lawyers. So bear with me here on this thought experiment as I set this up for you. I'm curious about your thoughts. And I have mixed thoughts on it, but I just it was an interesting idea, and since nothing's published yet, and you haven't had a chance to listen, I want to give it to you and get your opinion on it. He proposed that you could take something like the subscription model, and you could, make it a public thing. So like you pay for it through taxes or something. Whether it's just another line item in the government budget, or it's something you could opt into on your taxes. Check this box, and we'll deduct $20 a month from you. And then you could pick from this list of local attorneys who have signed up to do this, subscription service. So it's not pro bono because the attorneys are getting paid. And maybe it's more than 20, maybe it's less than $20, and you'd have to figure it out on like a national thing. But would it make sense to like take the subscription model and extrapolate it to a government thing that attorneys could sign up for and make money from it while they're providing like this, bare minimum, whatever that looks like, even if it's just one phone call a month with an attorney? Just so you could get all your questions in one day a month, it'd still be better than nothing, right? But then the question is, should this be a government thing? Like, should the government be providing the service? And then should it be statewide? Should it be federal? And so it was an interesting idea that he had, and I'm just curious what your take on it and how you would make it better, or if no, that would be too broken and it's not even worth it. Let's invest in something else.
Lauren, thoughts on that? I have a few thoughts.
I appreciate the outside the box thinking. My initial thoughts are, I don't know if I want to take that control away from the individual practitioners. There are other models similar to that, obviously not on a national scale, but sort of those models of, we third party charge the client something, and then we sort of turn to you, practitioner, and say, here's what you're going to do and here's the cost. I just don't think that's fair to the client or to the practitioner, because all of us have things that differentiate us, and why you might want to work with me as a family law practitioner versus my colleague could just be a personal preference. So I think it really boxes. It kind of goes back a little bit to that one size fits all, or, here's the box that we're trying to shove people into. So I like the idea of let's be creative and throw all of the ideas on the table. I think there certainly could be some good that comes out of it, but I would be hesitant to have a program that the individual practitioners could not determine the value, the scope, what the price was going to be for the value that they provided, and work that out with the client directly. That would be my biggest concern.
Yeah, I also love just throw it all out there. I'll consider anything at this point. Again, we need all the ideas we can get. It sounds a lot like legal insurance to me, but on a national scale, which legal insurance definitely has a place here in the United States. It's actually, I've heard, quite popular in Europe. So that's something to think about. But I don't know. I would be more concerned that when the administration changes, it would just go away. It would be there, and then 4 years later it wouldn't. And then, so that's the first thing that comes to mind to me with respect to that. I do like the idea, though, again, of like the national scale. And one thing I would love to do is get Intuit and TurboTax to include at the very end of their tax return software, say something like, would you like to get a legal checkup next? Because a lot of the questions you've already answered are very relevant to like a legal wellness or health checkup and would really help people identify a lot of legal problems. Something like that, I think it could be super helpful, and just, again, helping people identify if they have a problem. And then from there, you could connect them with different resources. And I don't know, I mean, ultimately, it really just comes down to also like, what does the subscription include? Again, if it's preventative in nature and it's going to help people identify problems and not have problems in the first place, I think having that on a national scale may be run by the government in some form, but again, more kind of like screening versus providing the service, perhaps, could be an interesting idea. So I don't know. Maybe all that goes together somehow too.
I would love to see a state like try to do something like this, just so we could see, right? That's the benefit of living in this experiment of a democracy, right? Is one state could take it and try it and see. Yeah, a lot of problems on a national scale if we try to implement it. But it was a super interesting idea. I definitely had mixed feelings on it. Almost everyone I've interviewed, with the exception of like 2 people so far, have been women or attorneys of color. And these are the attorneys who are looking at alternative billing as a means to practice law. And if you look at the ABA data on the profession from 2021, it shows very clearly that the legacy model, what I'm calling the legacy model, has failed women. It's failed attorneys of color. There's a big retention problem, and so my question is the subscription model and what On Purpose Legal is doing, is this a solution or part of a solution to that problem?
Yeah, I definitely think it's part of a solution. I don't think it can be the solution, because I think we still need big law and other existing institutions that have not provided paths and been inclusive for women and people of color. They still need to exist. So they actually need to make some changes too. But we are definitely offering options. Again, we're just showing people that there are different paths and different opportunities that you can pursue to achieve your goals. So I think, yeah, we're definitely offering those things.
I'm trying to figure out, like, why is it though that there are attorneys that look like me? They're like, innovation, but our women attorneys and attorneys of color are jumping at it faster than anyone else. And it reminds me of that chapter from Outliers, like something about like Joe Flotsam. I can't remember the exact title, but there's a section in there called The Importance of Being Jewish. And it was because Jewish attorneys couldn't get hired back in the day. And then all of a sudden those practice areas became super important. And I'm seeing that, or I'm not necessarily seeing, but I'm predicting that, before we know it, women and attorneys of color are going to be, really taking the lead on this, and also getting a lot of clients, because right now, clients want to hire people that look like them. And that's hard to do in the big firm structure, to see what your attorney looks like. And so I just see that, maybe not next year, maybe not 5 years from now, but things that what I'm trying to accomplish and what On Purpose Legal is trying to accomplish, I think that's who you're going to see the change from first. And so my question is, do you have thoughts on that? And like, why is that women and attorneys of color are doing this before white male attorneys like me?
And I say we, as a female, we didn't build the system that we live in. It was built by white male attorneys, and so it works for them because they built it. And I think that the more that our profession becomes inclusive, and we need to be inclusive, and we need to have a much bigger breadth of people that we bring in and ideas that we bring in, that when those happen, people like me figure out that the system that as it's been built doesn't work for me. Like I said, right, I'm a mom and I don't want to work 90 hours a week, and my goal isn't to become partner and to get burned out and leave the profession one day. And I think that there are a lot of wonderfully intelligent, lovely, creative women and people of color who want to practice and have a lot to give to the profession, but they look at the system that has been built, and like Jessica was saying, big law and the partnership track is not for them. So they are the first sort of in the front lines to go, there's got to be another way to do this. And we certainly welcome and encourage those different thoughts and want to support those people and empower them, because we agree that there is many different ways to show up in the legal profession. And, the system that's been built for, the old white guys has worked great for them. But for the rest of us, we'd like something a little bit different.
Yeah. So in 3 words, I think it's just out of necessity. And that's when entrepreneurs are born.
Lawyerpreneurs? Is that a thing?
Let's make it one.
Lawyerpreneurs. Yes, sure. Why not?
All right. I don't think we're going to get any better than that. So I'm going to finish with one last question. Whoever has an answer first, go, and then I want to hear from the other person. And that is, go with your gut response here. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Why?
Because then we would call it a sandwich.
Jess?
Oh, I'm torn. At first I was going to say no, because how do I explain this? There's only one opening, but then I guess you have like other forms of sandwiches where there are. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes, it is a sandwich.
Why?
Because I want to. Because I can. Because I get made fun of all the time that I live in Chicago and put ketchup only on my hot dogs. And so now I'm just going to continue to be annoying when it comes to hot dogs and say it's a sandwich.
All right. I'll take it. So with that, first, Lauren, tell the listeners where's the best place that they can follow up with you if they want to.
Absolutely. So I'm on all the major social media channels. Miss MS Lauren Lester is my handle. And then alternatively, you can check out my law firm's website and get in contact with me there, which is mylifelawyer.com.
Where can they find you, Jess?
I'm not quite as organized as Lauren, but on LinkedIn and Instagram is where I am most. But honestly, if you want to have a conversation with me, just send me an email, jbednarz@chicagobarfoundation.org, and I will set up a time to chat.
Links to everything in the show notes, and where could they find out more about On Purpose Legal?
Visit adifferentpractice.com and you will find all of our resources and all of our courses, as well as a link to our network to connect with other like-minded practitioners who are developing their own modern practices that support well-being and where they are successful, happy lawyers.
Because if you want a different practice, you need On Purpose Legal.
Exactly.
Look at you. We need to hire you.
Well, thanks so much for being here.
Thank
you. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for sponsoring this show. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with someone you think would find a value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn, since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.